And we're back with Bill Pubols after a station emergency where we went off the air. That was exciting. I hope you weren't frightened.
It was.
Are you unsettled?
Well, I checked my seat for a floatable cushion. And
Good job. The oxygen mask would come down and you'd be fine.
I just put my head firmly between my knees and
well done.
near my sweet Lord to thee, whatever it is.
Well done. So Biblical Studies Center down at BSU, just tell us a little bit about what you've learned down there, just working with the students down there.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things, and we had mentioned this a little bit ago, chatting with you, the kind of the generation gap between people that might support the BSC and want to give and really want to make a difference, but they act like it's kind of, well, back in Oregon where I'm from, they have a thing called Wildlife Safari, where you can drive through with your car and, don't roll down the windows.
Uh-huh.
The ostrich will stick its head in the car and say,
Right.
Roll up the window, Harold.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's a natural feeling of distance. There's a gap between the generations, and it can go both ways, but it doesn't take much to close that gap. And so anyway, as I'm describing students, the reason I'm saying this is you get to know them a little bit, and guess what? They're human beings who are, in some ways you can make all these lists about, well, we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have this, and everything's different, and so we our brains can't even function in this. Well, you know what? I tend to have a little bit more hope than that. And yes, there can be things that are way different. And my wife and I talk especially about how much when we got our Schwinn Stingrays, it changed our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We became new people, almost metamorphosized into superheroes with these bikes, and that didn't seem to happen with our kids as much. And we scratched our heads and said, why is this so different? Well, I can either sit there and complain about it, I can force them to ride a Schwinn Stingray around, and
Uh-huh.
or we can say, okay, what are they interested in? What captures them? What motivates them? And so when I'm down there with students, and we're right next to the Boise State campus. In fact, they're building a brand new alumni center, kitty corner from our building. And so we're going to be, I don't want to throw rocks at it, but, I could from our building right across the street. And so the students, they come in, and freshmen come in, and they have a certain worldview, but it's actually the things that are biblical are fairly fragile. And so one of the things I want to do is help them rebuild the walls of their worldview, a biblical worldview.
Right. So the technology, well, and every generation has been, this generation, unbelievable.
Yeah.
In the 20s, it was these kids and their swing music. And, it's just always been, for all of time, just that, that generational issue. But they are, because of the technology, maybe more informed on a particular worldview because they can get so much information at their fingertips, right? And they've got some leaders in that movement. If it's an atheistic, worldview, they've got their Richard Dawkins, and they've got their
Sam
Harris's, all those guys. So they are more maybe informed in a way, or at least have some surface level information to kind of guide them.
Well, it's interesting because I still think that your average student is, you think the bell curve. Your average student is your average student, and I know that's profound. You give you a minute to take
I'm digesting.
Right. But the average student isn't maybe as into that stuff. I mean, you'll be shocked at what they're into. They're into wondering what God's will for their life is. They're wondering who they're going to be, what they're going to do. They're stressed about finances. They're stressed about grades. They're stressed about relationships. They don't know how to do relationships. They don't know, who are they going to marry one day? Are they going to meet them in college? What generation hasn't thought about those things? So when we think about, yes, the cell phone is a big deal, but it's still peripheral to the central issues that they're dealing with. And as we talk about relationships, to me, that's the nature of our Trinitarian God. It's relationship. It's a relational God who's included us in creation and wants to bless us in relationship. And so that's what we're offering to students. But one of the things I will say I've learned is, 20 years ago, I could go on campus and just ask students to sign up for stuff, and they'd stop and chat. It's different today. I can still do that, but they're inundated with Visa card offers and other club things, free giveaways, pamphlets. They're inundated, and of course then they have it blinging up on their phone all the time, and so for me to stand there, I'm just one voice among many, and we have to go about it in a more, I'd say, a calmer, more intentional, even relaxed manner, so that we're building into the lives, we're building relationships with these students. And at the same time, helping them, not just blasting them with biblical truth. I mean, frankly, there's a guy that I've known, or haven't really known him, but I've known of him, and I've seen him at different campuses, who puts he's gone out in campuses with a bullhorn, and he he's got a big sign that says God hates fags, and he gets people around him, and I've just, that's been a head scratcher for me. Like, what are you trying to convey, and how are you using that? I could throw an M80 into a classroom, and then as they're running out, say, Jesus loves you. Boy, I got some FaceTime today. Good FaceTime, didn't I? Well, that's about the same in my mind. But when you build trust and you build relationships with students, that's when you're gonna find some traction to really build into their lives and help lead them to Christ.
This is a generation that wants to be missional, isn't it?
Very much.
Because even just the business community has picked up on that, because water bottles are geared towards, buy this water bottle, and a water bottle will be given to somebody in another country. Umano is a big company that's come out. Buy their shirts, and a child gets a backpack somewhere in the world. It seems like so much of the marketing to millennials is based in that. So there's that heart, in them that God has put in there. And so to impact the world for Christ, it seems like that would just be the next step.
Yeah, and I think when you understand culture and you study it and you look at it, it gets to be the point where, where are these things coming from? Some of them, it's like it started with the Judeo-Christian ethic, and it kind of did an end run around that, and now it's coming back, and that can be actually a real, that's a very strong cultural, I don't even call it a mandate, it's just a known, it's part of the culture of the students, Christian or not. This is a strong sense of morality to be doing this. And when I start to trace back, where are things coming from? Where do these ideas come from? I always think of Jesus saying, "Show me this coin. Whose image is on it? Caesar's. Okay, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and render to God what is God's." And what he's talking about is the image of that coin is Caesar. It's really it's his system. We live in it. But the image, the imago Dei, the image on us, is not Caesar. It's God. And we're meant to imitate God and be Christ-like. And so I'm calling them to say, yes, do good moral things. That's great. But how are you gonna do that? Are you gonna, recycle a bunch of plastic? Where's that gonna get you? That's a good thing. If you're a Christian who cares about his or her world, and you haven't thought about, our just the physical resources we have and taking care of them and stewarding them, then I question if you're really paying attention. On the other hand, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I still want to make sure I keep the main thing the main thing. And so when students are coming to me, I try to care about the things they're caring about, but I always want to point them to Christ and say, ultimately, how are you going to deal with the bottom line of your very existence? Where is purpose and meaning in life? What is this life about?